Yo, 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 hit 'em high, hit 'em low. It's the Noble Just Ball podcast. It's your boy Q's alongside Julian. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Just got some devastating news as a diehard Knicks fan. Just want to
Yeah.
say rest in peace to the great Willis Reed. Um, yeah, it's a shame, and hopefully this just drives them to win a championship, man.
I mean, sure, but I mean, sending all the love to his family,
Yeah,
and wishing them the absolute best. Definitely a New York icon for sure. Today, though, we are fixated instead on not New York, not either of the coasts. We're talking about the middle of the freaking country. We're talking about the NL Central, the senior circuit, uh, maybe the greatest rivalry in baseball outside the Yankees and Red Sox.
I would say so.
Or would that be Giants Dodgers? I don't know. It's two or three.
Yeah, it's up
Cubs Cardinals. We're not going to start there though. We're going to start with the Brewers because
there.
alphabet. Uh, So we're going to go Brewers first here. We're going to get right into it, break down each team. The Brewers lineup reads as such with Christian Yelich slated to lead off and play left. Willie Adames at short behind him. Roddy Tellez in the three spot at first. Doing the catching, William Contreras, newly acquired from the Braves. Jesse Winker behind the plate. Luis Arias at
The
third.
better of the Arias from this World Classic.
Yep, there it is. Garrett Mitchell in center, Brian Anderson in right, Bryce Turang, the rookie, getting some looks on the opening day roster at second. Wow. On the bench, you have Victor Caratini, another Puerto Rican born player. Uh, then a whole lot of like utility in the form of Michael Brosseau, Keston Hira, and Owen Miller. Some other guys who could get to first. Unfortunately, they're going to do without Tyrone Taylor to open the season, so their outfield looks a little fuzzier than it should. Other guys who could see some time: Alex Jackson, Peyton Henry behind the plate, Brian Navarreto is in the minor leagues there. Luke Voigt is was a recent signing for them, along with John Singleton at first, Abraham Toro, former Astro and Mariner. And then Blake Perkins is on the 40 man, as along with a few guys. Tyler Naquin is on this team, Sky Bolt, Monty Harrison. It's an interesting outfield if they all stick around for a little while. Um, how do you feel about that lineup?
I really like the top half of the lineup. I feel like if everything goes smoothly, hopefully we get to see Christian Yelich return back to form. I know they're not projecting him to, but I feel like he's not old enough to start declining. Maybe his injuries are just piling up. I really liked Rowdy Tellez. He was probably the shine of their lineup that just came out of nowhere last season. I
Yeah,
really like him. And then the adding of William Contreras, the young catcher, I think can definitely bolster something that they were not really expecting to see this soon in
yeah,
that
for
position.
sure.
The thing of notoriety is just how many utility guys they have in their bench. I don't particularly like their bats, but I really do like that it can give insurance to just the defense behind any pitcher or any type of situation if they are up late in games.
Yeah, no, for sure. Really love the lineup in terms of positional flexibility.
Yeah,
This is also another lineup where you go, it's so balanced that it's literally lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty. Uh, then you got a trio of righties on the bench who could potentially platoon. Really interested to see if that is in fact the case where Bryce Turang breaks camp to play second base for them, because I would not have guessed that whatsoever. Moving on to the starting rotation, the sort of uh, I think unilaterally, undeniably considered the strength of this team. Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Eric Lauer, Freddie Peralta, and Wade Miley rounds it out in five spot. Unfortunately, they're going to do without Aaron Ashby in the early going, dealing with some shoulder fatigue, projected back in May or June. So hopefully get him back soon. Jason Alexander has some shoulder inflammation. He's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. Other guys who could see some time in that rotation, Ethan Small, we got to look at last year. Jason Junk, one of the most fun names in baseball. Tyson Miller and Gus Farland. So how do you feel so far with that rotation? And
That's
you know
such a
what?
great that's such a great baseball name.
It is, right? Like
I love
I'm gonna
it.
be so mad if he does not just throw absolute junk. Like,
Yeah.
it's nothing but
It's
curves,
definitely a missed
sliders.
opportunity.
Yep.
But enough can't be said about how good the two-headed monster is between Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff.
Okay. Ready? This is gonna
Um,
be a harder question for you.
all right.
Is this the best 1-2 in this?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Because I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some
yeah,
incredible 1-2. I mean, in New York alone, you go
especially
Verlander,
when
Scherzer.
they're on, they're on.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little disrespectful that they are projecting them both to have 3 ERAs. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely see my big question here is, did they burn the bridges, so to say, between the two and the organization where it can get a little fuzzy and we don't know particularly what the futures are with the team. But
Yeah.
as of right now, with the team, I do really like it, especially the unsung name that probably not going to get a lot of love is I really do like Freddie Peralta being at the back end of this rotation.
Yeah.
Um, he's a good righty, good veteran, or not even veteran. He's still has same service time as Corbin Burns. Holy shit, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
Yeah. It
But I
feels
just
like he's been around for forever, though, right?
yeah, it feels like he's been around for a long time.
And he's
Um,
somehow the youngest member of this rotation. That only gets crazier. Um,
I think he's just going to be probably one of the unsung heroes in this rotation that he's not going to get the credit that he deserves.
yeah, no, definitely agree with you on that. Really, really like what this is. Eric Lauer definitely impressed last year. Hope to see Aaron Ashby back being a factor in this sooner rather than later. It's a maybe the best rotation top to bottom in baseball. Definitely in consideration, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's definitely in
Uh,
like the top five, top six.
yeah, for sure. So I mean, I love what this team is. I think you hinted at it a bit. Is this still the rotation by season's end? I think we'll bleed into that a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, quite frankly, we already. I personally tip my hand a little too early with the 2023 3 words or less. I flat out alluded to. I think Brandon Woodruff gets traded very early on
yeah,
if the Brewers get off to a slow start. Um, Especially to try to bolster that lineup in some capacity. In the bullpen, you go Devin Williams closing the door now that Josh Hader is full time not there. Matt Bush, Peter Strzelki, never know how to say that name. It's a lot of consonants. Wow. Hobie Milner, Javi Guerra, Bryce Wilson, Joel Payamps, Adrian Hauser could potentially also see some time in the rotation, but will at least for now start the bullpen. Justin Wilson had Tommy John last June. They took a flyer on him this year, potentially throwing him out there for some time. Another name, Cam Robinson, Jake Cousins, Elvis Peguero, all have had some. Cam Robinson has not yet. I'm sorry. But the other two rubbed some elbows with some service time. Alex Claudio, another Puerto Rican pitcher, is going to be on. He's a non-roster invite, likely to start in the minor leagues, but potentially work his way into some playing time. So that'll be interesting. For me, the bullpen is still very solid,
yeah,
which is an interesting thing to say about a bullpen that traded away Josh Hader last year and then lost Taylor Rogers,
yeah.
Tyler Rogers.
One of them.
One of the Rogers twins left. Was the comeback from San Diego and just let him walk. So Devin Williams, big fan of him. You know what he's been able to do since coming up a couple years ago, winning Rookie of the Year and everything. He's been absolute lights out in the back of the bullpen. You expect nothing less at this point from him. But I like what the bullpen is. You know, it's not the best bullpen, but it's a nice complement to a rotation, I think, where you expect essentially every guy to go six every day. So,
Yeah, I definitely gotta agree. It's still strong, and it's crazy to think about how strong this bullpen could have been if they kept Hader. Um, but I do like it. It's deep, especially in the minors. I really like some of the names that I'm seeing there, especially some of the non-roster invites.
yep.
I think this could be definitely one of the strengths if they can get a lead leading in, which hopefully with that rotation, hopefully is the complement to this and can produce some wins for this team.
I like that. I like that. All right, we're gonna move along now to the St. Louis Cardinals. All right, and we're gonna talk right away about their lineup. Leading off, playing shortstop full time now, Tommy Edman. Center field, Tyler O'Neill. First base, Paul Goldschmidt. Third base, Nolan Arenado. Catching, Wilson Contreras. In the same division as his brother, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Lars Nootbaar in left field. Uh, I'm kind of shocked to see this, but apparently making the major league roster, their top prospect, Jordan Walker, as
Yeah.
a DH no less. Love what his bat has been in both the minor leagues and what we've seen in spring training. Kind of surprised that they're not projected to sort of push him down at least in the early going. Brendan Donovan will play second. Dylan Carlson right. Off the bench, you have Andrew Knizer, Juan Yepes, Nolan Gourmand, Taylor Motter. Um, Unfortunately, the team will be without Paul DeYoung, strong defensive presence on the infield, at least in the early going with some back issues. Ivan Herrera could see some time catching along with Tres Barrera, former Nationals standout. Lucan Baker could see some time, is a name to sort of be on the lookout for. Jose Fermin, and their number two prospect, Mason Wynn, is essentially their backup shortstop now, which is interesting. He's in the minors, or at least he'll start in the minors, but should anything go sideways, could see some time. Alec Burleson, Moises Gomez. I'm going to be honest. I mentioned this before we started in my you know 3 words for 2023. This is my most excited team in
Oh yeah,
2023.
this team is going to be good.
For me, it starts with the lineup. I love what they are. I love the combination of been there, done that with youth and excitement and energy. Dylan Carlson has been absolutely incredible since coming up to the big leagues. Brendan Donovan was so much fun last year. Nolan Gourmand is probably going to take Donovan's place at some point, you think.
Yeah.
No, Lars Nootbaar is fun. Tommy Edmonds a lot of fun. Tyler O'Neill is going to have a full-time place center with Harrison Bader gone. I just love what this lineup can be. The potential addition of Jordan Walker from the outside is really interesting to me.
Oh yeah. If that's the case and they're running some type of outfield platoon to keep like the legs fresh with
Yeah,
between Walker, Nootbaar, even Yepes at some point, because Yepes, I love his bat.
yeah,
Um, it's this team is so deep
yeah,
that like I don't see why not. Like
yeah,
this team has a lot of stuff I really like to see, especially Jordan Walker. Him having both outfield and infield experience,
yeah.
you can pretty much put him anywhere. God forbidding any injuries or
Mhm.
some rest days to Goldschmidt or Arenado
Yeah.
now that they're getting up there. Um, it's just his team's deep, and I really like what I'm seeing here. Um, yeah, I don't I don't really got
So
much to add, especially if Walker makes the roster. This
yeah,
team's even better than I thought it was going to be.
for sure. Then we move on to from what I would define as the clear-cut strength to the clear-cut weakness is going to be the starting rotation for me.
Yes,
Adam Wainwright,
for sure.
is going to still be your ace, some 20 years later. Miles Mikolas, Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty is in the 4 slot there, but I think that's just because of injury more than anything else at this point.
Yeah.
Steven Matz in your 5 hole there. Other guys who will see some time in that rotation will be Matthew Liberatore, who we saw a brief glimpse of last year. Jake Woodford will split time between the rotation and bullpen. Dakota Hudson, Connor Thomas, Andrew Suarez could be interesting. Hasn't been in Major League Baseball in several years. Played in Japan after a year and a half of leagues. Kyle Lehigh is another name to be on the lookout for. A couple of top prospects in Tink Hence, Gordon Grassifo, Michael McGreevy could see some time. So kind of all over the place for me there
Yeah.
with that rotation. You're sort of looking long term with the youth coming up, but also for me personally, I'm not in love with this starting 5. Jack Flaherty's in a contract year. I'm a big contract year guy. Jordan Montgomery. That's the other part of this. You got 3 guys in a contract year, 1 guy you're expecting in Wainwright to retire at the end of the season. I think the big issue for me with this rotation is everyone's leaving.
Yeah.
So either A, start signing somebody to an extension. If I'm looking at it, I say, either sign Flaherty and hope the injury troubles disappear, or Jordan Montgomery because you might be able to get him on a little bit of a discount. And this is definitely the team most likely for me to trade for a starter very fast.
Yeah, definitely. I was more surprised that Steven Matz is still on an MLB roster, to be honest with you.
I mean, he still has another year, I believe, after this one with the Cardinals, where he's they had signed him for what was it, 3 years or 4 years actually. So he's going to be there. He's the only guy expected to be there next year.
My question with this rotation: do we see Gordon Grafeco making it to the roster this year? I know he's slated in AA right now, but MLB right now has his projection debut at some point in 2023.
I mean, for me, I look at it and I say, one, it's an older rotation. Flaherty being 27 is the clear cut. Yeah, I guess it's not close. Everybody's in their 30s. Wainwright's in his 40s. Even just when you go based on their projections, they're only projecting Steven Matz to make 21 starts.
Yeah.
Wainwright 28 starts. Flaherty 26 starts. So you look down the line and you go, okay, that means someone else is going to have to eat some starts out there, and that's not even taking into account any serious injury. That's just we got to skip Wainwright to start to 40. So I think for me that becomes the interesting part. I think Gracefo sees some time. Liberatore definitely will. Michael McGreevy is kind of the more fringe. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting rotation. Like I said, I don't see this being the rotation that ends the season. They were
something has got to give.
Yeah. So I mean, moving on though, we're gonna move to the bullpen. Sort of the surprise closer last year was Ryan Helsley. Took over the job from both Jordan Hicks and Giovanni Gallegos, both of who were out there, along with Andre Palante, who had a nice rookie campaign last year for them. Genesis Cabrera, the lefty, Chris Stratton, Zach Thompson, and Drew Verhagen. I mean, that's a good bullpen. For me personally, when you got 3 guys who could shut down the game, in a given, who can go out there and shut down with 3 different kind of, pitch actions. Jordan Hicks, obviously last year, I think they tried to move him into a starting rotation spot to see if they could. Didn't really translate well. But him in the bullpen is something special. Giovanni Gallegos, we know what he can be and has been for them. And then Ryan Helsley, just a freaking cannonball of an arm. It's shut the door. I really like this bullpen.
Yeah, same here. I really like it. I'm gonna be pretty honest. I can see Gallegos making a return back to that closer position.
Yeah.
Especially if he has a really stellar season, but It's just really good. I'd like to see maybe another lefty arm in there because there's only one with Cabrera. But besides that, it's strong. Even the righties that are there, they can get both lefties and righties out. I really like what I'm seeing.
For sure. All right, we're gonna move on now to the Chicago Cubs, the other part of that rivalry in the Central. Their lineup starts back at second base for the first time in a year since Javi Baez was there. Is now Nico Horner leading things off. Ian Happ will play left, Dansby Swanson at short, cleaning things up. Trey Mancini slated for right field for them. Cody Bellinger at center, Eric Hosmer at first, Patrick Wisdom playing third, Edwin Rios in the DH hole, Tucker Barnhart behind the plate. On the bench, you have Yan Gomes, Nick Madrigal, Zach Kinstry, Christopher Morel, who's I think going to see a lot more playing time in that lineup
Yeah.
as opposed to a bench role. Seiya Suzuki will open the season on the IL with a strained oblique, so hopefully he can return soon. Unfortunately, had some injury issues last year as well. Some other guys we could see out there throughout the season. Miguel Amaya, the catcher from Panama, who's pretty young. Could be something interesting. He's also nearing the end of options or minor league options, should say. Miles Mastrobuoni is out there. David Bodie is not on the 40 man this year, which is interesting. But still trying to play his way into some time on that team. Sergio Alcantara, former Diamondbacks prospect, is on this roster. Nelson Vasquez, Brennan Davis, and Alex Canario, even Kevin Alcantara. A lot of youth on the way in that outfield. So I think it's definitely interesting to sort of see where the Cubs go this year. I just immediately my thoughts that jump off the page with this lineup. With Ian Happ slated to, hit free agency at the end of the year, barring an extension. Cody Bellinger was signed on a 1-year deal. Trey Mancini, not really expected to be a full-time outfielder. This is going to go one of two ways for the Cubs. They're either going to promote that youth to the big league circuit pretty quickly, or they're going to use that youth to pad some spots via trade with some veterans. And I'm sort of curious which way that goes. Otherwise, I mean, it's an interesting lineup. At his best, Nico Horner could be a very strong leadoff option. We know what Dansby Swanson can do. I think you took him as your top sort of in our 20 questions segment. You took him as your top option or your top player in a new place.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Cody Bellinger was somebody to watch for forever. Now in a new ballpark, we'll see what he can do. How do you feel about this lineup?
I honestly like it a lot more than the names suggest.
Okay.
I feel like a lot of these names can produce, and even then, I think I'm more high up on like the young players in Chicago and what they can be. Like Christopher Morel, I think is going to end up getting a full-time position at any spot. He's probably I don't know if he's going to be in one position per se, but he can definitely end up being that Chris Bryant type role where you can put him anywhere on the diamond. He's going to produce. His bat's there. I really like Nick Madrigal, Nico Horner, Ian Happ, and Dansby Swanson. It just and they're good defensively, which I think is going to be the key for them.
Yeah.
Is keeping runs off the field, doing whatever they got to do to get outs. And I feel like that's going to be the strength of this team, especially when Seiya comes back. It's going to be a stronger lineup. And I do expect we're going to see Kevin Alcantara at some point. I can see him having a similar year to like how Michael Harris did, jump from Double-A straight and win Rookie of the Year, or at least be in contention. I was watching just a bunch of film on him the other day, and he's got so much like pop in that bat. It's crazy. Yeah. I'm really excited for him to end up making the majors at some point.
Yeah, no, for sure. Super underrated piece of that. He was part of the Anthony Rizzo trade.
Yeah.
So former Yankees prospect. Speaking of which, as we move into the starting rotation, it'll be anchored in the 5 spot by another Yankees prospect, and him was Nesky, who got traded for Scott Efros last year. 1 through 4, though, they go Marcus Stroman, another former Yankee, Jameson Taillon, Justin Steele to follow, and then Drew Smiley in the 4 slot. Some other guys who could see, most important, Kyle Hendricks remained
Yeah.
out with a strained shoulder from last season. It turned into a capsular tear. He is kind of questionable. There's no real timetable still from what I've seen on his return to this rotation. You hope he's going to be able to get back soon because I think it'll play very big for the Cubbies. Because otherwise you're relying on a lot of beyond that.
Yeah.
Javier Assad, Adrian Sampson, Caleb Killian, Ben Brown, Ryan Jensen, and a guy who I was big on for a long time. Unfortunately, the Cubs have lost a little bit of steam on is Braylon Marquez, lefty who now sits in AA projected for them. How do you like this rotation?
To be honest, I think it's a middle of the pack rotation. I think they will benefit, especially pitchers like Stroman and Tyone. They're gonna more benefit once this defense is more at its full peak.
Yeah,
As well, they don't have a lot of like strikeout guys to me. Um, I'm hoping Hayden Wazensky. I can't pronounce that name at all.
Wesneski.
With Wisniewski. I'm hoping he can, turn that corner and end up developing into something that they're
Yeah,
hoping for. I don't know. It's just for me, it's a very middle of the pack. A lot older than I expected this rotation to be honest with you.
yeah. I think it's that weird, between Stroman and Tyone at the top. Uh, it's a weird, I think it's also the first crop of pitchers we've seen from like when they broke in with Toronto and Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
respectively. They feel younger than they are. On the flip side, Drew Smiley feels so much older to me than he is. And then I realized, oh, it's because he's been in the league for 11 seasons.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's why. That makes sense now that you put that out there. Then we move to the bullpen, another closer by committee situation. And for the record, in the offseason, I thought this was a real serious landing spot option for Aroldis Chapman to sort of be the closer. But instead, they'll go Michael Fulmer, Brad Boxberg, Brandon Hughes, no relation to me. In the middle of the pack there, Adbert Alzolay, who could also see some time in that starting rotation. Rowan Wick, Julian Merriweather, Michael Rucker, and Keaton Thompson. Unfortunately, they'll do without Cody Hewer and Ethan Roberts for much of the season, as they both went out last year with Tommy John. We'll see when they're able to return. Some other names who could factor in Jeremiah Estrada. Tyler Duffy's an interesting name from Mark Leiter Jr. Manuel Rodriguez is a guy who sticks out to me. This is a bullpen that's I never loved the closer by committee.
Yeah.
It's always one for me that it makes me cringe whenever I hear the phrase. Again, I was spoiled as a kid with Mariano. So for me, I don't love that. I like what Michael Fulmer has turned himself into as a bullpen piece. I like Brad Boxberger, Brandon Hughes. Like, I like the pieces. For me, I don't feel like I love any of them as like that late inning guy.
Yeah, I can get that. I can get that. Especially I don't know. I feel like Michael Fulmer can definitely turn into the stereotypical, especially this season. It's 6th year or 7th year in the league. To actually end up winning the full on, like, yeah, this is our guy closing. Yeah. I don't know. Like you said, for me, it's a middle. I'm kind of iffy on.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what they can really produce. I feel like this is going to be one of those instances where they go into their minors a lot to try to figure out, plug and play a lot of these names.
Yeah, no, for sure. It'll be an interesting one for sure. We're going to move on now to the Pittsburgh Pirates to follow that up. With the Pirates, their lineup, I mean, there's some names when you start to look at it. Go shortstop O'Neal Cruz to lead it off, followed by in left field, Brian Reynolds. Right field, Andrew McCutchen, DH and Carlos Santana. First base, G-Man Choi. Third base, Cabrian Hayes. In center field, Jack Sawinski. Uh, at second base, Rodolfo Castro. Austin Hedges will do the catching and bat ninth. Kevin Plawecki as the backup catcher. Ji-Hwan Bae, Connor Joe, Travis Swaggerty, all slated to be a part of that. Unfortunately, I mean, it's not even unfortunate. Uh, I was a big fan of what Endy Rodriguez has looked like so far. He's a guy who can literally, I mean, literally play anywhere. Former pitcher who now catches, plays everywhere on the infield, everywhere on the outfield, is not making the opening day roster. I think they already announced that they're sending him back out AAA. Mark Mathias could see some time. Nick Gonzalez is an Arizona Fall League standout. Could see some time. Chris Owings. Let's see. What else do I really like here? Leover Peguero is an interesting one. Perhaps the most interesting to me not making the ball club or on this major league roster is two guys. Tucupita Marcano, who I thought was going to be their opening day left fielder, and then Miguel Andujar, no longer on the 40-man for them.
That's crazy.
I mean, as a guy who loved him when he was with the Yankees, absolutely heartbroken. He's out of options, so theoretically another team could pick him up if they wanted to, if they send him down. But currently not slated to make that opening day roster at all. Wait, how do you feel about what this lineup is? Obviously, I think some of the positioning might be a little fluctuating in as well as the spots they hit in, but how do you feel about it?
No, I think this is going to be a fun young team that's it's gonna produce a lot of runs. And it's just going to be fun to watch on the base path, especially O'Neal Cruz. You got Brian Reynolds right behind him. I picked Andrew McCutchen to win Comeback Player of the Year. So for the NL, so I'm expecting big things out of his return to Pittsburgh. I'm hoping it gives him the juice. Who knows if this is going to be his last season or not? But hey, what a way to go out if it is in Pittsburgh and doing well.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he outright said during a press conference that this is not his farewell tour.
Okay, then I'm all for it, especially if we get more Andrew in Pittsburgh. The fact that Ke'Bryan Hayes is, I feel like he might be a little low in the lineup.
Agreed. Yeah, very much agree.
See this swapping around, and definitely at some point we're seeing Endy Rodriguez. There's no point for him not to be shown at some point throughout this year, especially with the rumors and the story of this team going to be. Where's Brian Reynolds going to end up? Is he going to end up stay in Pittsburgh, or we trading him at the deadline? I feel like once that is decided, that's when we'll probably see him.
No, for sure. I very much agree with you. This is a team where, you look at an O'Neal Cruz, a Cabrian Hayes, Jack Sawinski for what he was last year for them. You get excited. Rodolfo Castro could be a fun second baseman.
Yeah.
This team is, especially this lineup, is going to be too fixated on is Brian Reynolds there long term or not?
Yeah.
And B, I mean, O'Neal Cruz is just this freak to watch.
I love him.
Aaron Judge size, but moves like Trey Turner. The math doesn't math there, but still somehow we're seeing it. So it's going to be an interesting lineup for sure. Their rotation, we move on to Mitch Keller officially got the nod. A really emotional video for him, getting told by his coaching staff that he's going to be the opening day starter, followed by Roansy Contreras, Rich Hill, JT Brubaker, Vince Velasquez. They comes over, former Philly, then in Chicago last year, now pitched there. Max Kranick is going to miss a good portion of this season after last season, Tommy John. Some other guys you could see this year, Johan Oviedo could see some time in the rotation or the bullpen. Luis Ortiz, Michael Burrows. I think the name to sort of watch, Quinn Priester, the number 5 prospect in the system, is not currently on the roster, but still could make the jump up. So you sort of start rooting for that a little bit. I'm gonna be honest. I like this rotation more than I thought I would.
Okay.
Rich Hill sort of being this like old wise man in the middle of this feels good to me. Um, it's a situation where a couple of the young guys in Keller and Contreras are definitely like they're legitimate major leaguers. They've proved this.
Yeah.
They're ready for the spotlight, and having Rich Hill to sort of not take the spotlight away as the theoretical ace, but sort of be the I've been there, I've done it kind of guy. I love that. He's going into season 14 and a half, essentially, at this point. Brubaker is an interesting name for me, both how it's spelled, but also, uh, who he is as a pitcher. Vince Velasquez is looking to bounce back and sort of be the guy who once upon a time thought he would be in Philadelphia. Uh, it's an interesting rotation. I'll put it that way. I like the youth without the age subtracting from it, but the age still exists to sort of push them along. I would put it that way.
Yeah, no, I get that. And Pittsburgh has a history of producing young, great arms, especially in the recent decades. So I feel like names like Mitch Keller, like you said, Contreras, I feel like they're going to be the two to really look out for. Um, I'm not so high up on the back end. I'm not a big Rich Hill guy.
Yeah.
Um, I'm hoping Brubaker and Velasquez they kind of produce more than what they are. Um, but I could see that being a big cost to this team
Yeah.
in terms of winning and everything,
Yeah. No, for sure. As we move into the bullpen now, a couple injuries to note really quick. A pair of discomforts. Charlie Garcia with a bicep discomfort. Robert Stevenson with an elbow discomfort.
Hmm.
Sort of recently in spring training. Will miss the start of the season, but will factor in at some point. Until then, though, your major league bullpen reads as David Bednar shutting the door. Will Crow, Dwayne Underwood Jr. before him. In the middle there, you have Chase DeYoung, Colin Holderman, Delry Moretta, Yeri De Los Santos, Jose Herrera as your long man. In terms of guys who we could see, Johan Ramirez has kind of bounced around a ton of systems at this point. Colin Selby, Caleb Smith, Tyler Chatwood, Rob Zastrinsky is another name I always look at. Some interesting names to say the least. And a guy who's going to sort of force his way in just because he's going to be Rule 5 eligible at the end of the season is Tanash Thomas, a prospect for a very long time who's looking to move from the rotation side of things to the bullpen. This, for me, is the strength of this team. Bednar is, producing at the back end of this bullpen ever since oh wow, who is their closer? Oh my goodness. This isn't happening to me. They moved the closer and Bednar took his place. Why can't I even remember who the closer was? Oh, that's so bad.
I'm blanking too, so it's not just
Oh
you.
no. That's so bad. Bednar took his job like a year and a half ago. This was not that long ago.
Is it Hudson?
No, it wasn't Daniel Hudson. There was somebody was the closer right before David Bednar. This is gonna kill me for a little bit. They ended up trading him. I don't remember where he went though. Will Crow is before him, is a guy who I could see really taking a step forward now that he's full time in the bullpen. Love what he can do. Famously, will forever be linked to Aaron Judge as the guy who gave up number 60 last year, and then gave up the walk-off grand slam to Stanton 4 batters later. So for me, I like what the bullpen is. I like what it could be. Dwayne Underwood Jr. pitched for Team Puerto Rico. Uh, really some incredible talent out there in terms of arms. Guys could be on the way. So that's just my take on the bullpen. What do you think?
Uh, I feel like it's young and it's Richard Rodriguez. Is that the name you're looking for?
Ricardo Rodriguez, yes.
Yeah,
Was it Ricardo? Richard Rodriguez. Did he
Richard.
go by Ricardo? Yeah, Richard.
Yeah,
Yes, he got traded to the Braves and then just fizzled out, unfortunately.
yeah. Sorry, I was looking that up.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be a strength, but it's a lot of youth and it's a lot of people trying to prove who they are. I'm looking for a name like Yeri de los Santos. I think he
Yeah.
could definitely be one of those people that step up. And if they do decide to move Bednar by the trade deadline, I could see him stepping up and taking over that role. I really like his stuff.
I think that.
Um, I don't know. It's an interesting thing where we know this team is not going to be great, and so good
Yeah.
bullpens on bad teams usually spell, hey, we're probably going to sell some of these names off right now.
Oh, for sure. But the weird thing is it's so much youth in the bullpen that it's almost feels
Yeah.
invaluable to like not
The-
sell on. Like there's no reason to, they're more in line than with a rebuild than half your freaking lineup is.
Yeah.
So that's the weird like angle of it, which is the reason I think I like it so much that, I feel like, contenders aren't going to take a chance on a guy who has only been in the league for a cup of coffee. So they
Yeah.
got a lot of guys who've been there for just that. Um, all right, so we're going to move on to the last team, certainly last and certainly least, the Cincinnati Reds. Man, did they get killed on the podcast last year. This year does not feel
Hey,
like it's going to be
spoiler
anything.
alert, that's going to continue.
It does not feel like it's going to be a whole lot better. You lead off with Jonathan India at second base. A lot of DH in projected for Joey Votto in the 2-hole. Will Myers was, I guess, their biggest signing and will now play first base again. Catching Tyler Stevenson, right field Jake Fraley, shortstop Kevin Newman, left field TJ Friedel, third base Spencer Steer, who a lot of people have some high hopes for, and then Will Benson in center. On the bench, it'll do Kurt Casale and Luke Maley, the rare two-catcher bench in play here. Jose Barrero, Cuban infielder, we'll see a lot of time out there, and Chad Pinder, former Oakland A. Unfortunately, they're going to have to do without Nick Senzel, who had toe surgery in November. Still no timetable on his potential return. Other guys to look out for, sort of getting some time for them is Matt Reynolds, veteran who's, traveled around the league a ton for parts of season. Still only 2 years of service time. Feels kind of crazy for Matt Reynolds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Alejo Lopez is going to see a lot more time in the major leagues than I think is projected. Jason Vosler, former Giants top prospect. Christian Encarnacio Strand. We'll see some time at the corners. Noel V. Marte. Ellie De La Cruz is another big name to watch. Number 6 overall prospect in baseball on the 40-man, which is interesting because I did not know that he was. Stuart Fairchild, Michael Ciani, and Nick Solak will also see some time in the bigs. It's a tough lineup when you look at it.
Yeah.
So we're going to go a slightly different route because we're optimists here. We're a positive pod, man. We get the people going. I want you to tell me, okay?
All right.
This isn't going to play into who's the guy to watch later. All right. Give me a veteran who you saying is going to be the guy who acts as like this flag bearer, the standard, the leader for this lineup.
I mean, if it's not Joey Votto, then I don't know who it can be.
No.
The only thing with him is just, is this his last year with the organization?
Yeah.
I did see some rumblings about them okaying trades if he's the one who initiates it,
Yeah.
which I get it. You got to pay him respect. He's been your franchise for almost 15 years plus. So it's just you got to pay him respect. Outside of him, I mean, there's not really much veterans outside of Will Myers.
See, for me, I was actually going to go with Kevin Newman, a
Okay,
guy who was actually working as a nice little veteran in Pittsburgh
I mean, he's got
until
4 years of
O'Neill Cruz
service. Is
took
that
his
a veteran?
job. And huh?
Is it 4 years of service, like in the bigs? Like,
I mean, but still, he just,
yeah,
every view I have in my head of Kevin Newman on the bench in Pittsburgh is him talking to like Brian Hayes,
yeah,
Tucupita Marcano, Rodolfo Castro. Like he's in their ear talking to them. And then O'Neill Cruz showed up and said, "Now I'm the future. Like, get the hell out of here." So now he's
yeah,
Cincinnati. So I see him being that guy, especially for what's going to be a very young infield crop very quickly. I've gone on the record a couple times, even though he's only been in the league for 2 years. Jonathan India is sort of playing his way to be,
yeah. I
it's
really,
going to go one of two ways. He's going to be the new Votto of like the career Cincy guy, or a team like the White Sox who has needed a second baseman for forever is going to, spend some prospect capital to go get this guy. Um, Moving on to their rotation, maybe the most exciting young 1-2 in
yeah,
baseball in Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. Uh, Not to be outdone by their number three in Graham Ashcraft, Luis Sessa. I'm shocked to see Brandon Williamson, who is their number three prospect in the system, slated to be their fifth starter. Uh, Part of that is due to the fact that you have Vladimir Gutierrez gone with Tommy John probably through the end of this year as well.
yeah. I'd expect it.
Luke Weaver has had some forearm discomfort recently. Justin Dunn has had some shoulder discomfort recently. There's some rumors that he might have some exploratory shoulder surgery to try to figure out what the issue has been. You root for all those guys to get better. Some other guys who could see some time in that starting rotation: Levi Stout, Casey Legumina, Connor Phillips is on his way. I don't know if he's quite there yet. 2020 draftee. Andrew Abbott, same deal. Chase Anderson is a sort of well-traveled veteran who could play into the rotation at some point if he's not released before then. I look at this rotation, and again, I'm going to go optimism. All right,
Hmm.
I'm going to say I feel about this rotation like I felt about the Mariners rotation in 2019.
All right.
Where it's a bunch of young kids, but you're starting to see it and you're starting to get the vision and realizing there's still a few more kids on the way,
Yeah,
where it's like, ooh, we might have something.
yeah.
Is how like to put
No,
things
I
in
could see that,
perspective.
especially with Hunter Green being showing everybody what he was last season, and then
Yeah,
obviously improving on.
especially by the end there. Yeah.
Um, I do like what Nick Lodolo's got. I'm hoping to see something great out of Brandon Williamson off of his first few starts.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a little worried that they might bite off more than they can chew and end up ruining the
Yeah.
kid, which I don't ever want to see, especially with young kids, first time starters.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think they're also not help, these young starters. Last year, I don't know if you know this, the ballpark that yielded the most home runs was the Great American Ballpark.
yeah, I could see that.
That's a little rough for a crop of young kids pitching
Yeah,
to sort of deal with. Is how do you bounce back after you give up the inevitable long ball in Great America? So I'm curious about that. I'm excited for what they can be and what we've seen so far, and I hope to see some more flashes. I don't think they full on arrive just yet,
yeah. No, they're still a few years away.
so that'll be interesting.
Out of Hunter Green, I think that's the only like all-star representative we'll see this year.
See, all right, okay. You know what? If we're gonna tip our hand, then we got to pick somebody else for our standout.
Oh yeah, no, I'll pick somebody else for my standout.
All right,
But
I actually have Nick Lodolo as the
okay,
guy who's going to be like, oh my goodness, everyone's looking at Hunter Green, but
yeah,
Nick Lodolo ends up stealing a bit more of the show this upcoming season. Just his ability to generate the ground ball versus the fly ball is going to play
Yeah.
huge. Especially in a ballpark, like Great American where you're playing 81 of your home games. So that'll be something for me. Moving on to that bullpen, we go Alexis Diaz shutting the door. Unfortunately, only Diaz pitching this year. Behind him, Lucas Sims, River San Martin, Buck Farmer, Ian Gibout, Fernando Cruz, Alex Young, Connor Overton. Unfortunately, they'll be without TJ Antone and Tony Santillan, both of whom have had some, real serious muscle issues. Now that I'm looking at it, TJ Antone just had a PRP injection for his flexor tendon. So hopefully they can both recover and be back, ideally before the deadline or the All-Star break. But we'll see. Some other guys who could factor in Joel Kunel, Ricky Karcher, Bennett Sousa, Derek Law, well-traveled vet, formerly with the Toronto Blue Jays and Detroit Tigers. Hunter Strickland is trying to insert himself into the mix. Silvino Bracho has had actually a really nice spring for them. Tayron Guerrero. Some interesting names here for sure. I like the back end of this.
Yeah, same here.
Lucas Sims is a guy for me who has gone underrated for a very long time in Cincinnati. Obviously, he lost his job last year outright to Alexis Diaz, who deserves the closer role. But I still like Lucas Sims. River San Martin is a very interesting case of a guy who's now going to full-time be a bullpen asset as opposed to the tweener role. Some interesting guys for me. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I really like the back end. Pretty much everybody else, very young. If not young, they don't have a lot of experience in the big leagues. I do expect it's going to be the Alexi Diaz show, but though, no doubt about it, especially now that Edwin's going to be gone for the season, I feel like he's going to feel the extra pressure and, show things that he's going to make a little jump that a lot of people are expecting him to.
Love that.
A lot of people were expecting, I saw a lot of people on Twitter expecting him to get moved. I don't see that at all right now. He still has.
It'd be 5 years of service time left before he hits free agency. Is a very interesting time for a guy.
Yeah, that's what I saw that on Twitter. I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, it's short of just Steve Cohen missing his boy.
Yeah,
I don't know what else to do there. So we'll move into our season projections. Okay. And I don't know. For me, the 4-5 has gone back and forth a lot. I'm just gonna go right into it. My 5 this year is actually Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
For a long time I was going Cincy, but I'm gonna go Pittsburgh Pirates at 5. I feel that unfortunately too much of the season is going to be dominated by the will they won't they with Brian Reynolds. And I feel too iffy on too much of what that team is or can be. And I feel like if I'm going young bats in Pittsburgh versus young starters in Cincy, I prefer the young starters on Cincy.
Yeah.
Ultimately comes down to. The guy for me, just outright, the person to watch in 2023 is not going to be O'Neal Cruz. It's not going to be Brian Hayes. Roansy Contreras.
Okay.
Where I'm saying everybody's going to be fixated on this lineup in Pittsburgh. Roansy Contreras is going to be this outright gem of a starting pitcher in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They've thrown the mini Pedro thing around too much lately for me to triple down on it. You've heard it about Sixto Sanchez. You heard it about David Garcia. You heard it about Eduardo Cabrera, or Edward Cabrera. You throw the term around too much.
Yeah,
Roansy Contreras for me feels like that caliber of pitcher, of the guy who's young. He's on a team not expected to do a whole lot. They gave the nod to the guy who's been working hard, and Mitch Keller, who I very much like, and is actually a candidate to potentially get moved during the season. Roansy Contreras is the guy for me who will go, baseline to baseline, start of the season to end of the season, being the best pitcher on this roster, regardless of who stays or who goes.
All right. Yeah, no, for me, five has, when I was making the list, I'm like, five is 100% just solidified for me. I think I got the Reds finishing last. I don't really care for their lineup outside of Jonathan India and Joey Votto. It's going to be hard for them to score runs, even with good pitching. Young pitching, though, they're going to give up runs, especially with how last year they led the league in home runs allowed. It's going to be rough. I think it's just we're going to see it probably towards the end of the year, them improving with the starting pitching. I just don't really see it that well. The name I do want to bring up is Ellie De La Cruz. I will say I will be watching once he gets called up and just gets a starting nod. He's going to be one of those bright spots. Where like, okay, we can build into something. I do like where their pitching's going, but I think you gotta have that bat and that player, that special player, in order to fully have people believe in the rebuild. And I think Ellie De La Cruz would probably convince people that next year.
Yeah. For me, I now go into my fourth slide here, and it's going to be the Cincinnati Reds. Again, Jonathan India is an interesting name. Votto, will this or won't this be his last season at Cincy or in general? The two guys for me, if I can cheat a little bit, I have Spencer Steer.
Okay.
As the guy at third base who, it's a rare opportunity whenever you see a young guy who had a little bit of a break into the major leagues in a previous season, very much be given like the reins. You don't really see who his, the alternative option there is. Hope that translates. He's the number 8 prospect in all of baseball. I can see him really being something. The flip side, though, the real guy I want to look at and highlight is Reiver Sanmartin in this bullpen. The fastball slider. The reason it never translated as a starter, people said, was predicated on this idea that he never really fully develop the third pitch. The changeup never quite worked. He threw a little bit of a sinker. It didn't really feel great. The fastball slider for him is something special. He can light up a radar gun, and the slider movement is something to behold. In a NL Central that I think has a lot of very important left-handed hitters.
Yeah.
I view Reiver Sanmartin as the answer, and somebody to definitely keep an eye on as potentially a future closer, whether it be the Cincinnati Reds or another team that won.
Yeah, I get that. For my number 4, to be honest, when I was making this, I just changed it while we were going through everything. 2, 3, and 4 for me, I feel like they're going to be a lot closer than a lot of people are, because I think 2 teams arrive sooner than they're supposed to. Yeah. And for me right now, I just changed it. I have Pittsburgh ending in number 4.
Okay. Wow.
I was really high up on the lineup when I was making the list. The pitching was kind of suspect for me. But as we were going through the roster, I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know. I feel like something's just telling me safe pick, Pittsburgh number 4. The person to point out, I'm not going to go O'Neal Cruz because I harper on him enough on how much I love watching him play. I think Key Brian Hayes is going to be that. Not Key Brian Hayes. Sorry. I have Andrew McCutchen in my notes. Andrew McCutchen, I don't think production-wise is going to be there, but I think what he provides to the clubhouse is going to be just invaluable for what he can do for every one of the young kids, from Key Brian Hayes, even Brian Reynolds at this point of his career. I feel like could use some Andrew McCutcheon wisdom. Um, Even the young kids coming up, I really like. I just feel like he can be that piece that triggers something in Pittsburgh to arrive earlier, and
I
so
like that a lot.
that's my standout for Pittsburgh.
I like that a lot. Moving on to the number three. You want to kick this one off?
Yeah, my number three is I. This is gonna shock you. I have Milwaukee being number three, and that's because I'm very high up on my number two. Not to say Milwaukee would be a bad team. I just think one. I just think the other teams arrive earlier, and the question marks for me are just too big, especially with Christian Yelich, um, and what happens with the pitching staff. But for me, the person that I want to give a little point out to, I think William Contreras is going to be a big piece in this team being successful if they are going to take a wild card spot or whatever this team can land. I think he's going to be that piece that they were kind of missing in the lineup, especially when everything's healthy.
I actually really like that a lot. For me, my number three is going to be the Chicago Cubs. I said it in our three words or less video. This is the most 500 ball club I've ever seen in my life. Like, man, oh man, Marcus Stroman was great in the World Baseball Classic. Do not get me wrong. Stroman, Tyone, Steele, Smiley, Wesneski feels like a 500 rotation. Um, the lineup of like up and down. I mean, when you go Ian Happ and Swanson as your 2-3, so theoretically you're looking at the two of them as your best theoretical hitters.
Yeah.
That's the most 500 team I've ever heard in my life. Like Cody Bellinger, when he's great, is MVP great. When he's bad, is horrendously bad. What does that average out to? Average. uh, like it's a weird one for me. I want, I love what the Cubs have started to do. Um, I sorry, not love. I like where they're headed. It just feels like they've added each year the most mid-tier, the best mid-tier guy,
Yeah.
whether it be Stroman and Stroman last year, Tyone this year in the pitching staff. Like I said, Bellinger, Swanson this year. Still haven't committed to anyone for an extension in that huge crop of 2016 World Series champions. You think maybe they finally give it to Hap. I don't, it's just a weird feeling for me. The guy I'm going to point out is going to be Patrick Wisdom.
Okay.
I love what he has done just as this like lone power bat since everybody got traded away. His projections are uncomfortably low, and I think he will overperform those by a substantial margin.
Yeah.
I do not believe in Trey Mancini being a clear-cut cleanup hitter at this stage in his career. So I feel Patrick Wisdom moving way up in that lineup. I think he's currently slated at 7.
Yeah.
He's going to see a
I don't
lot
think
of
that's
time there. Christopher Morel is threatening, but I feel him more as an outfielder, especially if they don't commit to Hap in the long term.
Yeah.
So Wisdom sort of locking down that third base. He plays a good third base. Being that sort of power bat in the middle of the lineup that makes the Cubs feel threatening. Uh, you know, Even though the names might be big, but the production elsewhere might be low. I think for me, Patrick Wisdom is the guy who's going to be the real sort of meat and potatoes of this lineup.
Yeah, for me, I got Chicago finishing number 2.
Okay.
I got Chicago finishing number 2. Obviously we just harped on it. I think I'm more sold on the youth movement with this team than that makes them arrive, especially my guy that I want to point out is Christopher Morel. I genuinely think he's going to be just otherworldly this year. I think he's going to have a great season. And especially once we see Calvin Alcantara join up probably in July, I think it's just going to take this team to give that little edge for me to Milwaukee, where I see is like, for me, I see Chicago rising and Milwaukee
Yeah.
falling. which gives me, by the end of the season, I feel like Chicago, even though everything's going to be close, I see Chicago being the second seed and um, being that team that surprises a lot of people.
Okay.
And I think
See,
they're with their rotation, which I think is probably their weakest part of the team. I already harped on this. I feel like the defense behind them, they're very contact heavy pitchers, that their defense is going to save a lot of runs and it's going to make their pitchers look better than what they are,
yeah.
to be honest.
So for me, the reason I went the opposite way, on paper, outright, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Cubs are rising where the Brewers are falling. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. The difference for me, and this is where it started, honestly, pretty recently for me to flip flop between this. I've long believed that one, Brandon Woodruff will be the first pitcher moved from this Milwaukee rotation. And to be clear, I don't believe either of them, whether it be Woodruff or Burns, will be resigned for the long term. Milwaukee is just not the team who does that. They finally gave out an extension for Christian Yelich and have felt spurned by it, since, which is unfortunate. You hope that they turn things around and can sort of trust in the idea that, hey, we can keep our homegrown talent, or at least the guys that we traded for in their youth. For me though, I started to look at what do you do if you're the Milwaukee Brewers in a division, and we've talked about it ad nauseum. Both
Yeah.
Centrals feel very winnable for a number of teams, and the Brewers have to feel like they are just as good as the Cardinals, just
Yeah.
as good as the Cubs. If you're going to trade a Brandon Woodruff, one to test the waters and say, hey, maybe we can commit to Corbin Burns, because I don't think it'll be Woodruff long term. What are you trading him for? Are you trading him for future prospects? Or, and this is where it clicked for me, there are quite a few contenders with log jams on the infield and outfield who could use a Brandon Woodruff as a one
Yeah.
hitter.
I can see that.
And that's where it suddenly starts to, could he be an Angel at the end of the season if the Angels are feeling it? And they move, a corner outfield, corner infield haul back to the Brewers of contending players right now. Could he be a Yankee with that infield depth? Gleyber Torres being part of the package coming back. I start to look at, okay, maybe they don't move him just for a haul of prospects, but for a haul of guys who could help them win right now. So that's why the Brewers sort of jumped ahead of me. The guy I'm going to point out, though, a guy I've been very high on for a while, Garrett Mitchell, center field, is going to have himself a nice little year. And the rationale for me is he freaking has to. Tyrone Taylor goes down with injury.
Yeah.
Nipping at your heels right now if you are Garrett Mitchell, okay? And he's a young kid. He has, barely scratched the surface of his major league career. Behind you, you have number one prospect in the system, Jackson Chirito, number 7 overall in Major League Baseball. Joey Weimer is your number 2 prospect, also an outfielder. Your number 4 prospect in the system, now number 3 prospect in the system is Sal Frelick, another center field.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to make it because otherwise you're gone.
Yeah.
Like with so many top prospects nipping at your heels in the outfield, and you're the first guy to sort of break that, threshold, you have to.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, they're going to bring up the next guy because he's literally right there. They're going to call him up and you're going to be screwed. So for me, out of sheer necessity, it'll be Garrett Mitchell is the guy to watch, to have a big season for them. Potentially move into a table setter role just because of what his skill set could be. So that's my guy there. And then we both have the St. Louis Cardinals at the top.
Yes, we do.
Who's your guy for St. Louis?
For me, the guy, I think it has to be Wilson Contreras.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to go with the other one. I just think you step into Yachty's role are big shoes to fill, whether it's in the pitching staff or now you got to produce in the lineup because we know you can hit. For me, it's big shoes to fill, and I think him producing to what we know he can produce as is a big key for this lineup to fully reach its potential. And on paper, this is the best roster in the division. Outside of maybe the starting lineup is both of our biggest holes, but I feel like with enough bats, you can kind of hide that.
Yeah. No, I like that. I'm going to go with a pitcher,
Okay.
not in the rotation, in the bullpen, but not any of the big three of that bullpen.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Genesis Cabrera.
All right. I like it.
I think his stuff plays so incredibly. And again, I'm a big proponent of if you have the lights out lefty
Yeah.
to where teams who don't want to, especially now, and we talked about some of the lineups in the AL Central, you'll play a lot, and you know the AL West, you'll play a lot. Play more games against the NL West. I think having that lights out left plays so big in terms of what you force other managers to do lineup wise.
Yeah.
And the one thing I will say about Oliver Marmol as a manager in St. Louis, he is not committed to any guy in that back end role
Oh yeah.
until you earn it. We
He's
saw it last year with Ryan Helsley just taking that job away from
yeah.
Giovanni Gallegos.
That's the thing I
Giovanni
respect a lot
Gallegos.
about him.
So that's what I'm saying is for me, Genesis Cabrera can be this guy who can just, you have two lefties coming up in the eighth, seventh, eighth, ninth. Genesis Cabrera getting that ball, in that big spot for a team who has World Series aspirations. I think it's a huge spot. It's the right spot, and it's the right guy at the right time.
Yeah.
To sort of move into that, guy we're talking to for a very long time. So I'd say definitely look out for him. Man, some interesting stuff in this NL
Oh yeah. No,
Central.
I have an interesting central. I expect it to be more shockers than the cookie cutter that we're expecting it to be.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you for
Of
doing this with
course.
me, man. It was always a fun
Always.
time. Thank you guys for watching with us. It has been real. It has been nice. It has been really, really nice.